Over the course of this class, we have learned a lot about the Bible and about Christian theology and about aspects of Christian living. However, there are, of course, many other questions and many other topics that we have not addressed in this course. In this final class, we're going to be addressing some of the most frequently asked questions by confirmation students to help meet some of your curiosity and also to cover some areas that we just simply haven't turned our attention to this point. So welcome now to this final class of common questions. Many years ago, my great-grandparents, who lived in northern New York, were driving through the countryside, and they saw in the sky an object that they could not identify as a plane or a helicopter, and it was not a bird. It seemed to them to be an object, some type of aircraft from out of this world. They and other people, which sometimes gets reported in the media, had an experience of seeing a UFO, or unidentified flying object. And how, as Christians, do we make sense of these and related experiences? The seeing of a UFO, or a Loch Ness Monster, or Bigfoot, these experiences, we can wonder whether they are hallucinations or whether they are tricks of the natural world of light and of sound, or if they're misidentification of other aircraft or animals that we know. For questions like these, as interesting as they may be, as Christians we cannot address them with a great deal of confidence, for in each of these topics the Bible has unfortunately nothing to say on them. And while our curiosity thereby may yet remain, we can with confidence nonetheless know that they and other questions about this physical world are not necessary for our salvation. We may ask, whether Jesus and his coming and his atonement saves also aliens or life forms beyond this world if they exist. And that is a question for further and deeper theological reflection. As Christ was unified in human form, we wonder if he thereby saves all of humankind, or if his salvation was particular for the human race. However, I think we can all agree in our study to this point that if we do ourselves ever come into contact with an alien life form that may happen to exist, we should, of course, as good Christians, be kind to them. Another frequently asked question by confirmation students is that of ghosts. We celebrated Halloween not too long ago, and there were some people out and about dressed as ghosts. And do ghosts exist? And if they exist, what are they? Just a couple of months ago, I was out in Massachusetts helping with a wedding, and there was a wedding coordinator there who just a couple weeks ago had an experience at the resort at which he worked of having some sort of ghostly experience. And you yourself may know some friends or may have seen some stories on TV about haunted places or experiences with ghosts. And this, like the former question of UFOs, is a little difficult to address because the Bible doesn't talk much about ghosts. In some Bibles, the scriptures use the word ghost, but in those cases it almost always refers to episodes of giving up the ghost, as it says, or if someone is giving up their spirit, which is a way of saying that one passes on. The Holy Spirit is sometimes also referred as the Holy Ghost. And in this sense, a ghost is meant to be a holy or a spirit, whether human or of God. And so it shouldn't be necessarily confused with ghosts as we understand them in our popular imagination today. However, there are a few references in the Scriptures of warnings and admonitions against trying to consult with ghosts through mediums or spiritualists. The books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, as well as Isaiah, speak about using mediums and people trying to contact the dead, and it consistently forbids it, saying that we should rely on God alone rather than trying to communicate through mediums or fortune tellers or stuff like that. Rather, we should trust God and walk with God in confidence day by day. And whether ghosts, as we imagine them today, exist or not is, again, sort of an open theological question. But regardless of whether they do or whether all spirits of people go on to heaven or to the judgment, we can still live with confidence and without fear that God looks over all of our ways and protects us day by day. And if ghosts do exist, we as Christians can confidently say that we should, of course, not fear. Do angels exist? As in the preceding sections, I've also had conversations with people who have had experiences of interacting with an angel, of either seeing an angel or hearing words as from a messenger. And the Bible on this count is rather clear. There are ample descriptions and references to angelic beings and angelic activity in the Bible. In the upcoming weeks, we'll be reliving the Christmas story, which includes, of course, an angel, Gabriel, coming to share the message of the coming Messiah to Mary and also to Joseph. And angels play an important role in God's workings in this universe, and even, as the Scriptures make plain in its stories, even in people's everyday lives. They are good. They do the will of God. They bring messages primarily, which is what angel means. Angel means a messenger, and are altogether with God in heaven, but also interacting with humans here on earth. Angels, of course, are good things, are from God, and we can delight in them also being part of creation. Although, of course, our experience of them is very rare. I cannot claim to have any known experience of an angel myself, although I trust that God works through them in the world as I know it today. A related question is that of demons or devils. And according to the Scriptures, the demons or devils are also angels, created spiritual beings of God, but have fallen and have turned away from God and serve evil rather than the goodness of God. And the Bible also makes clear mention of demons or devils, and that they too have a negative impact in the world in which we live. However, like ghosts, we hold securely to God's goodness and His promises for us. And while we certainly see evil at work in our world, in our society, and even in our own hearts, we must steadily resist and, to the best of our can, of course, strive to do good. Whether the good things that come are done by angels or the bad things that happen are the work of demons, it's very, of course, difficult to say. But again, we can live with confidence, knowing that God is leading us and protecting us and shielding us, and really have nothing at all to fear. Another question of interest by many confirmation students is that of hell. We've talked about life everlasting and heaven, but have not addressed the doctrine of hell. The Bible does speak of a hell of sorts. And I say of sorts because the way that we popularly imagine hell or damnation is perhaps a far bit beyond what the Scriptures themselves warrant. Jesus talks with some frequency about a place called Gehenna, which was a place outside of Jerusalem where they basically burned their trash. There's also references to the pit. There's references to a place of suffering and separation from God and of weeping and grievance as a place that is opposite to the blessedness, joy, happiness, and holiness expected by those who walk with God and hold fast to His salvation for them. Hell, as it's shown in movies or in books or even imagined in comics or in our own personal imaginations, may not quite capture what is suggested in the Scriptures. And what is suggested metaphorically is a state or even possibly a place of separation from the goodness of God, where one is sorrowing and in pain, but most prominently, one is distanced from the goodness and the grace and the peace and the joy of God. We can see this in our own individual lives. If we turn away from God, go our own ways, practice cruelty and evil, and give no regard for justice or righteousness, that very soon our lives here in this earth will be a very dark and negative, a destructive and painful place. And reversely, if we live a life of faithfulness, of goodness, of kindness, of justice, of peacemaking, life here on this earth becomes very happy and good and prosperous and full of life. And so the conception of heaven and hell, as we hold them to be actual places or actual future spiritual states beyond this world, while we can't talk about them with great detail, as they are referenced mostly metaphorically in the Scriptures, we can understand them as an eternal extension of the way that we choose to live our lives here on this earth. Regarding hell, we certainly rely on the promises and the goodness of God, on His covenant made with us in baptism, on His promise of forgiveness, and His constant calling us back to Him. So we must strive and embrace and hold fast to these promises, and we should not fear damnation. But on the other hand, it is inextricably a part of Christian theology, and it is witnessed to in the Holy Scriptures. And we should take it seriously and orient our lives towards pursuing the good and its ultimate destination in heaven, rather than straying the other way. And one final frequently asked question in confirmation programs is that of free will. People wonder whether the choices that we make are actually our own, or does God already know what we're going to do in advance? Now, this is a difficult question to answer because the Scriptures seem to support both sides. On the one hand, there are multiple references in the Bible about God knowing everything, including knowing what we will do, knowing all the steps of our lives. In this season, as we're approaching Christmas, we're going to be hearing from the prophet Isaiah of the foretelling of the coming Christ, knowledge and prophecies which were made 8 centuries before Jesus actually came. And Jesus, in His own ministry, could tell people what they were going to do, and which they subsequently did. Does God, therefore, know everything that we are going to do, and is everything we're going to do, is that fixed? On the other hand, the Scriptures teach about personal responsibility, and God's ethical teachings for us presuppose that we are able to do them or not to do them. They are contingent on us having free will or free choice. So the Bible supports, strangely, both positions. On the one hand, God knows all. On the other hand, we seem to be free and are expected to use that freedom for good. This question has perplexed Christian theologians for centuries, even millennia, and there have been a constant debate for 2,000 years. It is still not resolved, and I might suggest that this is a mystery, that while God does indeed know all things, we at the same time feel to be and seem to be free. And the way I sort of consider this is God is a chess master. This is an analogy I often use. We, playing a game of chess, often have freedom about what we're going to do, what moves we're going to make, how we're going to play our game. But God is much, much, much better at playing chess than we are. And He has a remarkable way of, wherever we seem to go in life, Him bringing things around and still working things out for good. And I hope this gives some confidence that while we should employ our free will to make the best decisions we can and to comport our lives positively, we can make decisions without fear, trusting that God indeed knows all, and that He also has a remarkably good way, as I can attest to in my personal life, of bringing things together, even mistakes that we've made, and still working them out beautifully and rightly for His purposes. Whether we are free or we are determined, I cannot say, but it seems to me that it's some of both. So whether you've done this by your own personal hard work and commitment and perseverance, or whether it's been God's doing, bringing you and all of us and this possibility together, you have now completed your confirmation program. It's been a journey as we've studied many of the sections of the Bible, learned how to find up verses and acquaint ourselves with the main figures and the stories and the teachings, as we've learned about the main doctrines of Christian theology, going through the Apostles' Creed item by item, and seeing in greater depth how it pulls together portions of the Scriptures. And also, we've learned about the Ten Commandments, God's moral teachings, more about the person of Christ, about the sacraments, of other miscellaneous questions. You have come through a considerable journey this last year, and now have a much richer and more thorough understanding of the Christian faith. Congratulations. I have no doubt God has had some hand in it, and I also have no doubt that you have had a lot of hard work yourself. So good job, and we hope that you will continue to grow in your Christian faith by continuing to joining along in worship and gathering with the other faithful, of pursuing your own individual study of theology books, of continuing to learn from the Bible itself and practice your own daily prayer and continue to live out your faith in your daily life. I hope this is regarded as a beginning of your Christian life of sorts, certainly one that is now grounded in a much deeper understanding. It's been a real pleasure to be with you to this point, and I look forward to your futures in your Christian life ahead. So God bless, and great job again.